Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly. I'll be your teacher for this lesson. Today we're going to talk about writing and language, and we're going to read a story. We're going to look through the story, and we're going to discuss different grammar points and answer 10 questions based on these grammar teachings to prepare for your SAT test. And so what we'll do in a lesson is we'll read through the document together. We'll practice for natural speech. We'll also think about where does it sound different? Where does the mood change? Where does it sound awkward? And this can teach us some hints about where some answers might be. So, to begin, I'll read the story of Don Kingman, painter of cities. A 1954 documentary about renowned watercolor painter Don Kingman shows the artist sitting on a stool on Mont Street in New York City's Chinatown. A crowd of admiring spectators watched as Kingman squeezes a dollop of paint from several tubes into a tin watercolor box. From just a few primary colors, Kingman creates dozens of beautiful hues as he layers the translucent paint onto the paper on his easel. Each stroke of the brush and dab of the sponge transforms thinly sketched outlines into buildings, shop signs, and street lamps. The street scene Kingman begins composing in this short film is very much in keeping with the urban landscapes for which he is best known. So this is one paragraph of 3 paragraphs in the story. We have 10 questions, and we're going to focus on the first question, question number 12, which is in the second sentence. Now we can see this paragraph has a number of sentences, 5 or 6. And we're only going to look here at the second sentence. We're going to focus on it very carefully, because we don't want to focus too much on the difficult words found in the third and fourth sentence, because those are just going to waste our time during the SAT. So we have a crowd of admiring spectators. Let's look here. In question number 12, you're expected to recognize and correct inappropriate shifts in verb tense and mood. The example given here is a crowd of admiring spectators watched as Kingman squeezes dollops of paint from several tubes in a tin. The first thing you want to do is identify whether or not you have problems with the subject and the verb agreement. What you can do is identify the verb and ask who or what is doing it. This is really important to remember during a test when you're nervous. So here is watched. This is the first verb. And also, question number 12, do we want to change this verb? Well, we're going to identify the verb, but we're also going to identify another verb. Here we see a crowd of admiring spectators watched as Kingman squeezes dollops of paint. My annotation looks like paint, doesn't it? He squeezes dollops of paint from several tubes into a tin. So let's say them together and make sure they match. We have the past tense of this verb is watched. And then we have the present tense, squeezes. The subject and the verb are the skeleton of every sentence. We want to make sure that we fit the important parts together correctly, and that the fact that the entire sentence should have the same tense. This is very important. So making the subject and verb agree is easy when the verb directly follows the subject. Can we identify the subject? You can use your annotation buttons as well and highlight where is the subject. You can see here we have crowd and spectators. Which one are we focusing on? It's quite important to understand what subject and verb is trying to agree. So, we can see in the notes that I'm going to pull up here, this subject and verb don't directly follow each other. Sometimes there's a prepositional phrase that comes between the subject and the verb. Example, the city, in all its moods, inspires poets. The cities of the Midwest inspire poets. We have to think about plural verbs and non-plural verbs. What are we trying to agree? So here, inspires, and here is inspire. So we're going to go back up to the example. The example question says, a crowd of admiring spectators. Think carefully, which one is the subject? If you've chosen a crowd, you're correct. Admiring spectators is not what we're focusing on here. It's going to be tricky to think about, but we can practice more. Let's focus on the answer. We have a crowd of admiring spectators. We're going to change the verb watched to a crowd of admiring spectators had watched, a crowd of admiring spectators would watch, or a crowd of admiring spectators watches. Now let's remember, here we have two verbs. We've got watched and squeezes. We're not asking if squeezes should be changed. We're asking if watch should be changed. So we've identified two verbs in the sentence. We've identified the subject, a crowd, and we can understand by making sure that the entire sentence verbs agree, that the answer is kind of clear. Third person, a crowd, can agree. Kingman is also third person, he. If we're having more trouble, there are other notes that we can look at. I would like to reflect on sharing with the student at this time and see if we have to go further, if we want to test our knowledge of verb-subject agreement. There's lots of exercises that we can do. We can check whether or not the subject is singular or plural, and we can practice reading the sentences together and stress the difference in verb tenses and subjects. So here's some reading and writing to practice to identify these questions. We want to highlight the plural verb or the non-plural verb. He listens. He is third person subject. So finally, I would reflect on question number 12. I would ask, why is the answer correct? For question number 12, why is D the correct answer? And so having fun, going through the practice questions, discussing the theory, and also looking at the rules that we really have to focus on when we're analyzing an SAT question. We have to identify the nouns, we have to identify the verbs, and we have to identify how they agree and what problems can we really clearly identify so we can save time and go through the rest of the questions in a clear and confident way. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you've learned a lot about subject-verb agreement, and I look forward to teaching you more. Thanks.